Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I appreciate all of you showing up here on a Friday. I know it's hard to get people to go anywhere on Fridays, but you're here. And luckily for us, we have a very distinguished panel here for this conversation. I want to briefly introduce myself. My name is Jesse Holland. I'm a 1994 graduate of the University of Mississippi. I am the race and ethnicity reporter for the Associated Press in Washington, D.C., and the author of The Invisibles, The Untold Story of African American Slaves in the White House. I'm originally from Holly Springs, Mississippi, right up the road. And I'm here today as your moderator for this panel. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow, race relations. And I'm going to ask my panelists here to introduce themselves by their first and last name. If you want to read their bios, you pick up this. You can see all of their outstanding achievements in their biographies here, but we want to get to the panel, so I just want them to introduce themselves, first name, last name, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Starting with me?
Starting with you.
My name is Poinesha Barnes. I am a producer for WREG. I produce the 6 p.m., and I'm a proud alumna of Meek School of Journalism.
I'm Selena Standifer. I'm the Deputy Director of Public Affairs at the Mississippi Department of Transportation.
Ashley Ball. I currently work for Siemens Corporation doing external communications, and I graduated here in 2013.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Dandridge, and I'm a business attorney at Butler Snow in Memphis, and I'm also a Meek journalism alum.
I'm Gabriel Austin. I'm the video editor at Mississippi Today, and I'm a 2015 alum of the Meek School.
My name is Kells Johnson. I'm an assignment editor at Fox 17 Nashville, and I am also a Meek School alum. I graduated in 2014.
So you all have experience. So most of you have experience here at Ole Miss.
Yes.
So we're going to start with the question, and anyone who wants to answer the question, just jump in. What was it like for you here as an African-American student at Ole Miss during your time? Anybody jump in? Go, please.
Okay, I kind of had an interesting experience here because I joined this historically white fraternity here. So I kind of placed myself in some pretty, some pretty uncomfortable situations sometimes. My dad actually warned me against this. And I was 19 and I said, Dad, I'm gonna do what I wanna do. So I did, and that kind of shaped my experience here. So I kind of lived in two spaces almost, like kind of off fraternity row and on fraternity row. And I did experience some really awkward situations due to sometimes my fraternity brothers or other people on fraternity row, and like, do they know I'm here? Or are they really gonna do this or say this? And so it was uncomfortable sometimes, but I would say enjoyable as I look back.
Okay, so I'm a journalist, and I can't just let that general description slide by. What was the most uncomfortable situation you encountered?
So it was actually my freshman year before I joined this fraternity. It was, but I was walking on fraternity row. I had just, given a guy a lighter, shook his hand, walked away, and a UPD officer rolled by me and like swung back around. I was like, he's not about to come talk to me, is he? And sure enough, he was like, what'd you just give him? And I was like, a handshake? And he was like, all right, put your hands on the car, and like frisked me on campus.
On fraternity row?
On fraternity row. I was underneath a light when I had given that guy a lighter and a handshake, and maybe 100 feet down, sure enough. And it made me so mad that I just walked back to my dorm. So that was easily the most uncomfortable thing that happened to me.
Okay. Anybody else want to jump in here?
I would have to say I had the privilege of being on the Ole Miss campus between 2 elections of Mr. President Obama. If anybody else, if all of y'all are here, it was really, really, really crazy. So I had a few personal experiences, but I think those 2 years were my most crazy. I had like people run up to me, push me, hit me, run off. It was really insane, like going into my dorm room, being threatened by my dorm mates and so on and so forth. So that's pretty much the worst experience I think I could say as far as being Black on the Ole Miss campus, by far. So.
I actually had an experience when I first got here, my freshman year. I did jumpstart, so I was kind of familiar with the campus. And then, of course, everybody knows about the square. My incident kind of happened on a Thursday night during after a party that I had left. And the way the square is made, I mean, of course, you can get to your car different ways because there's all kind of different alleyways. For some reason, I decided to walk away, my own way, away from my friends, but we were all going to the same car. And I actually encountered this group of guys who was, of course, under the influence. And they were blocking the sidewalk. It was maybe like 4 or 5 of them, and they would not let me through. And I didn't want to walk around because I didn't feel like I needed to. You can just move out the way. And they didn't do that, and when I kind of just moved through their group and said, excuse me, they began to throw homophobic slurs, racial slurs at me. And of course I knew that they were under influence, but that was like my first time that I'd ever experienced something that all of my family and friends said I would experience before I got here, when I told them I was going to come to the university.
So this brings up this question. Would you come to Ole Miss again, knowing what you know right now? Would you come to Ole Miss again? Would you tell anybody else that they should come to Ole Miss? Jump in, anybody.
Oh, I guess I'll answer that one. So yes, I would. I tell people this all the time because I get this question quite a bit. My experience at Ole Miss was definitely different here. My sophomore year, I joined a predominantly white sorority, Phi Mu here. And then my junior year, I ran for student body president here. So my experience was always very up and down, up and down. But one of the things I tell people all the time when people ask me that now is that, you know, I wouldn't trade my experience here for anything in the world, the good and the bad, because what I think that it did, it prepared me so much for the world that I'm in now. Mm-hmm. Corporate America, it prepared me for work life, it prepared me in learning how to work with other people. Because of my experiences in Phi Mu, I learned so many things from being in that sorority and being in the house with those girls who didn't look like me. And I hope that they learned things from me, and I definitely learned things from them. And I felt like sometimes I had 2 lives. I had a life on Sorority Row, and then I had a life where I was the president of the Black Student Union. So I always felt myself like having to balance, you know, the two. But I think that both of those experiences, being in Phi Mu and then being, you know, like I said, the president of the Black Student Union, I think that they all shaped me. And as a result of Ole Miss and as a result of my experiences here, the way I interact with the world, the way I see the world is just very different from a lot of other people because I've had those various experiences. So I definitely would come back to Ole Miss any day. And I hope that, you know, if I ever have kids, I tell them, you know, I would tell them to come here because it does give you a glimpse of the real world, and you have experiences here that you will also have in the real world. And I think that there's no other place, I feel like, in the country that can give you an experience like that other than Ole Miss.
I'll piggyback off what she said. I would 100% tell anyone to come here because, you know, of course there are those people who will look at you and judge you on your face, being that it's brown or it's black. But for those people, there are some magnificent people on this campus that are beyond helpful and have been helpful to me as I've moved into the professional world. I mean, I've gotten both of my jobs through relationships that I've formed here, and so I would, any day of the week, I would tell someone to come here.
I think Kim spoke to something that was really powerful, kind of how if you're a minority here and you're really involved, it makes you very conscious of your blackness because there's already a small population of minorities on this campus. So whenever you do get into an organization, 9 times out of 10, there are not very many people who look like you. But then you do go back home and you're hanging out with your friends, whether you're in the union, and you get to surround yourself with more people who look like you. So you definitely get the best of both worlds. And it's a very eye-opening experience because you go to school, you don't really expect to experience what most people don't experience at other campuses. And I think that coming to Ole Miss for me was something that definitely made me ready for the real world, made me ready for what it's like when you do walk into a job interview and someone already has an idea of what you're going to be like based off the color of your skin.
From your time at Ole Miss, from the time you started here to the time you left, did race relations change? Did anything change as far as race relations on campus? Now, I'll start by saying I graduated a long time ago. I graduated from Ole Miss in 1994. And some of the stories that you've told was happening back then as well. Any of you were here when I was talking at the earlier event, my first week on campus as a freshman staying in Deaton Hall was the week that a white fraternity tied up 2 of their pledges, drove them to Holly Springs, and dumped them out on Russ College's campus with "I hate blank" written on their chests and drove away. That was my introduction to life at Ole Miss. But from the point I started in the point I started in 1989, through when I left in 94, there was a change on campus. We had more conversations about race. During that time was the first black editor of the Daily Mississippian. So I saw I'm not going to go as far as saying a sea change, but I saw a change on campus. Did any of you see any change in race relations while you were here on campus? And I'm going to pick on Ashley.
Sure.
We'll start with you.
Change. So when I was on campus between 2009 and 2013, I was very involved on campus, considered a student leader. However, I'll be quite frank, my social group of friends was not racially diverse. And I think that speaks to an unspoken norm that's here at Ole Miss. I'm not sure what it's like today, but when I was a student in my 4 years, I think it was an unspoken norm where you would talk to or be friends with people who were outside of your race if you were in the same organization, if you were involved in this or that. But if you guys were living in Modern Hall or another dorm, you wouldn't necessarily go to the union and have lunch with a group of girls who may be a different race from you. So to simply answer the question, has it changed? Or did I see a change in my 4 years? Absolutely. No, I didn't. I think that it's just the unspoken norm of, yeah, if I know you, I may speak to you, but if we're in the same organization, but not really try to get to know you. So I'm very happy that we're having this conversation today and hope to try to push that forward.
Okay. Anyone else?
I agree. It was cliquish. It was, that's just the way it was. I mean, it was cliquish. You were in a sorority, you were in a fraternity, you were part of this organization, you were part of that organization, and you just stuck to what you knew. And I come from a background where it was 3 African Americans in my graduating class. So I was used to being around mostly Caucasians. So it wasn't a big deal. When I came to Ole Miss, I was used to that, but I did meet people that came from predominantly black schools that were having very hard times adjusting, and it seemed like they would look for something or any little thing, they were offended, and I would be like, well, I don't think they really meant it that way, and I would try to be the moderator, and I was like, I can see how you took it or how it could have went the wrong way, but I mean, I do think it was just cliquish. I didn't see any changes.
This is something I should have asked earlier because it's a big part of Ole Miss life. How many of you are Greek? Just us? Okay. I will say I would have expected more. But once again, it's part of those cliques you were just talking about. And it's like a whole different society inside of a school. I'm going to ask each one of you to answer this question. Because what I want to know now is what racial issues have you had to deal with as a professional? Once you left campus, once you're out in the working world, what racial issues have you had to deal with, and how did you deal with it?
I am happy to answer that. Let's see. I live in Washington, D.C. now. I've lived there for about 4 or 5 years. For context, I don't want to give away the name of the company, but I worked several places, so I don't want to say what organization it was. But I was entering a meeting with a group of colleagues. So there were people who were on site at the meeting and a few people who had to call in. So it was a conference call / meeting. One of my colleagues went around to kind of give a roll call of who was at the meeting, who was on the call. When she got to me, so number one, she called me the wrong name. No big deal. I'm sure it was an innocent mistake. She called me another black girl's name. Granted, there are only 2 black people who work in our office, but it was an honest mistake. However, when she realized the mistake she made, to cover it up, she made a joke and she said, "Oh, you guys know what I mean, the other black girl who works in the office." In that moment, I was so shocked, so stunned, so embarrassed. I didn't know what to say. I really didn't. I had never, so my experiences at Ole Miss, coming from Clarksville, Mississippi, were very indirect. So I had never actually dealt with a microaggression, if that's what we want to call it, in that way. I honestly had not. So it took me, and maybe we'll talk about stereotypes later, it took me almost 2 days to say something to her and let her know how uncomfortable I was. And I'll simply tell you why. I was so afraid, number one, being in corporate America, typically you are the only black person there. I was so afraid of being the overly sensitive black person who can't take a joke. Secondly, I didn't want to come off as the angry black girl who approaches her colleague too aggressively about something that made her uncomfortable. So it took me 2 days to figure out how to approach her, the right words to say. What do I do? What do I say? So that's one of a few things I've experienced working in corporate America, but I'll let other people talk.
Anybody, jump in.
So I'll give it a little context. So my name is Poinesha, which is stereotypically a urban name. But I am very, very proud of my name. I'm named after my father, whose name is Poindexter. But I can give you all countless examples. One of my favorite just happened 3 weeks ago. I was on the phone with a lady I was trying to get some information from. I'm a news producer, so I'm in charge of a 30-minute segment of a day. I put it all together. I do the camera shots. I do working with reporters. I make sure that everybody's stories are together. And on certain occasions, I have to actually call outside of the station and get extra information. So in this case, I had to call a business in South Haven, Mississippi. So I'm talking to this lady. We're having a great conversation. She's like, "Oh my goodness, you're so nice. I love Channel 3, yada, yada, yada. What's your contact information?" "Oh, my name is Poinesha Barnes. You can reach me at," "Whoa, you don't sound like a Poinesha."
That a lot.
"Excuse me." And I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all my time at Ole Miss shaped me not to be the meek and humble type woman. I have never been quiet thanks to Miss Street. So I've fortunately never been afraid of being like the angry black woman or you hear me roar. Okay. So I very nicely and tactfully told her that I sound exactly like a Poinesha, and she can reach me at 850-382-0801. So that's one. If you guys want to hear another one, I have plenty.
My experience is very similar to Poinesha's. I work as an assignment editor, so I'm practically the information center for the newsroom. Everything comes through me, and it's dispersed amongst the newsroom from me. I answer all the phone calls for the newsroom and receive news tips. So we have a tip line, and I work the morning show. So my schedule was midnight to 8 a.m., which has recently changed because now I'm on nights, thank God. But during that time, you get a lot of crazy callers. You get a lot of people who are under the influence or either have mental health issues. Maybe 2 or 3 calls out of the 15 I get a day are legit. But it's a guy who actually wanted us to do a story about how many undocumented workers we had working at our Nissan plant in Smyrna, Tennessee, which is also in the Nashville area. Based off of the recent Day Without Immigrants that we had, because they actually had so many people not show up, their plant couldn't operate, which was a story for us. And in him pitching that story, he also began to give his personal opinion. And he began to say things like, they shouldn't be here, Muslim this, yada, yada, yada. And he made the statement, well, they can barely speak proper English, and he could barely speak proper English. So I did let him out and said, well, sir, I understand that that's a concern for you, but I don't really understand how that has anything to do with the story. And he said, wait, are you black? Yes, I am black, if you must know. And then he followed up with, well, I should have known. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? Well, of course you all stick together. I said, sir, that's a very ignorant statement. And I'm here to take your story idea. However, I will not be subject to any kind of discrimination or any kind of defamation. And he hung up the phone on me. So that's just one example of many like Poinesha that I've experienced.
Many, many, many.
So mine actually made me like legitimately nervous for my safety, believe it or not. I was in Tupelo, and the summer of 2015, after the Charleston shooting, a lot of cities in Northeast Mississippi were debating whether or not they were going to take the state flag down from their official city chambers. And so a councilman in Tupelo had said, if we let everyone that doesn't live inside of Tupelo city limits come and talk about the flag, we'll have every nut from here to Itawamba County talking about the flag. And they took like this group, I can't remember what it was called, took like high offense to that. And so they're like, we want basically airtime to air out our grievances. Okay, so I agree to meet them in a public place, but there's this one man who, 100% of white supremacists, I'm very comfortable saying that. And I'm explaining to them how journalism works, basically how TV news works. I'm like, I try not to make my bites more than 10 seconds, use multiple, blah, blah, blah. And he gets irate and he's like, you guys shouldn't talk to him. He's only gonna take 10 seconds of what you say and spin it this way and blah, blah, blah. And he goes and gets in his car and drives past me and he stops and I kind of tense up a little bit and he just yells at me. He was like, if the Black Panther flag was flying outside Tupelo City Hall, could you ask them to take it down? And I was like, if I felt like it, sure. He's like, no. He's like, no, you couldn't. And he drives off. And I was like, oh, God, thank goodness I met these people in public because, it took me explaining how to do my job. And he was just lost his mind. So that was something else.
Oh, go ahead. Well, I don't have anything specific, and it's probably kind of sad because I probably have gotten to the point where I ignore it.
Right, see, I'm right there with you. It happens so many times, it's hard to pull one.
I know I'm sitting here going, let me see, and then something comes face way. So I have dealt with I can't believe you don't talk black. Right. So I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
And I've had people. I don't think that they mean to be. I don't know. But when you try to talk slang to me,
yeah,
it is very offensive
and uncomfortable.
And very uncomfortable because I'm like, I don't talk like that. I said hello, and then it sounds crazy. You look ridiculous. And so I've had those type. You make yourself look crazy because it's like you're just looking. So I've had those type of situations.
Or they try slang and you've never heard it before.
Yeah, I'm like, what is that? What's that mean? So then you're not black. You're a white girl with black skin.
Oh,
so
the Oreo comment?
Yes.
I've gotten that. Man, it's a lot because I graduated in 2001, so there's your answer. It's on the paper anyway. So I've been in the workforce for a minute. So it's just several. Those are probably the ones that are reoccurring. I've never really felt threatened. I can take a comment and indirectly hurt you back. I'm not trying to hurt you, but I want to embarrass you. So I can indirectly do that because that's with years of experience and knowing that I don't want to come across as the angry black woman, or I don't want to come across as, being tense or trying to be confrontational. But I'll give you an example. I started CrossFit. I live on the reservoir. So I go to the one that is near my house. And I come in and it's just one in particular. He goes, "Hey girl, what's up?" and it's been going on for months, and I'm just like, "Hey, it's fine, whatever." But this particular day, I was having a bad day, and I was irritable.
Always when you're having that bad day.
Yeah.
One day.
I'm coming
And one day out of the year, it gets that last nerve.
Yeah, and
everybody understands that last nerve day.
Yeah, and I'm coming to let stress off. So, and then you're adding it because I'm like, what is this though? I just start talking like a surfer person, like a surfer dude. What's up, dude? What's up, dude? Just start talking real crazy. And then it's just like, like, what is that? And then I just walk off. Right. And I let you think about it. So that's when I say indirect. I do comments like that to make you stop and think, did you get offended? You did. So don't do it to others because, right. and sometimes I just think it's ignorance. I think people try to connect with you because they don't know another way to do it. And so I don't get offended every time, because I do think they sometimes are trying to come from a good place and it just doesn't come across that way.
Did I get everybody? Did I miss it?
So me professionally, I guess Ashley, we were talking earlier, went to breakfast, and we were talking about how our experiences are so different. So she was saying she didn't have a lot of like experiences at Ole Miss dealing with like direct racism, and I had so many at Ole Miss that professionally I haven't had any direct. I've just seen it indirectly at work and stuff. But so my experiences at Ole Miss were very different. I had a lot of instances here, and I think part of it was because of the situations I mentioned earlier. And the type of environments that I was in while I was here. Professionally, though, and one of the reasons why I do think that my experience at Ole Miss has shaped me, I think that I've experienced so much here that sometimes other things like don't seem as outrageous to me, because some of the things that I experienced here were so outrageous. And so
Your insult meter has more.
Exactly. And so for me, professionally, I haven't personally had any direct instances where I have been, a victim of racism at work. But I do hear conversations all the time where, especially being in corporate America, everybody is always talking about diversity committees and what that looks like. And, and I always hear from my colleagues and myself, we always have conversations of, what you can and can't do as a Black woman in the workforce, as opposed to what you can and can't do if you aren't Black. And so, for instance, I had a conversation the other day with my cousin, and who's also an attorney in Nebraska, and we were having a conversation about our hair. And I don't think it's something that our colleagues who don't look like us, it's not a big deal. They get up in the morning, they wash it every day. I don't wash my hair every day. We can't wash it. So it's just very different. And this is something I used to have talks to my sorority sisters all the time, because they were always so fascinated with my hair. And so one of the things we were talking about was that my cousin wanted to get braids, and she's an attorney. And she wanted to get some braids, and she was like, do you think I should get braids as an attorney? We had braids in law school all the time. I wore them here at Ole Miss all the time. And I said, you know what they say, when we get braids, they treat us differently. And so, we had this whole conversation about dialogue, about whether to get braids in her hair, and it's similar to a style like what Poinesha has right now, something that's very professional, but sometimes it's taken very differently. And so I don't think that people think about that in like conversations that we think deeply about, and things that we have to think about that other people don't think about. And so for me, when it comes to like being Black in a workplace, I haven't had any direct experiences, but those indirect kind of conversations are just things that we've had to think about, where dyeing our hair, to some of my best friends and sorority sisters, they can go dye their hair blonde one day, dye brunette the next day. If a Black girl dyes her hair blonde, it's looked as ghetto. If they have their hair, it's just so different when it comes to saying certain things like that. So I think those are very like things that I think that are good conversations. And I think one of the things that Ole Miss I dealt with is my sorority sister and I, we were very honest and open with each other. And we had conversations we would sit in our house and talk about things like this. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's always good to have those conversations. So I think it's good to think also outside the box. You may not have to deal with those situations, but when you do have Black colleagues in the professional setting, those are things that they have to think about that sometimes other people don't.
I will tell you that I'm a wire service reporter, so I'm a print reporter, so most of the time people don't see me. They just see my name. And I'm at a mixer with a bunch of journalists in South Carolina, and another journalist comes up to me and said, "Oh, so you're Jesse Holland. I read your stuff all the time." And I start puffing up. I'm like,
Right.
"Yeah, I'm that Jesse Holland." Then he says, "I didn't know you were Black." And I'm like, "Oh,
What does that
okay."
mean?
And then he said, "You don't write Black."
Yeah.
I was like, okay. And by the way, this was a Black journalist.
Wow.
It wasn't a white person. This was a Black journalist.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it comes from all sides.
Yeah.
So the next question is, this whole Meek campaign is about rejecting stereotypes. How do you think that people have stereotyped you because you went to Ole Miss? And what's the difference between that stereotype and that reality? Now, I will start. About 3 years ago, I'm on the subway in DC wearing my Ole Miss cap. This older Black man comes to me. He's looking at me across from the subway. And we get out at our stop at New Carrollton. And I'm walking to the parking garage, and he's following me. And he finally stops me and says, "Why are you wearing that hat? Don't you know they hate black people down there? Don't you know your history?" And as a historian and a journalist, my hackles went up immediately. And I turned to him and said, "Have you ever been to Mississippi? I am a second generation graduate of Ole Miss. My mother went to Ole Miss. Both of my sisters went to Ole Miss. I know more about Ole Miss than you ever will." And then I had to remember I'm a Christian, and I had to walk away. Because you shouldn't talk to your elders. Like the next thing I was going to say, you shouldn't say to your elders. But you get stereotyped just being from Ole Miss.
Absolutely.
So what type of situations, what type of stereotypes have you encountered being from Ole Miss, and how does that differ from your reality? And I'll let anyone start with this, because I know everybody has an answer to this.
Right.
I like to start. So my experience is quite like yours. My father went to Ole Miss. My sister currently goes to Ole Miss. And I do love it here. But I think that when people say, "Oh, you're a black girl who went to Ole Miss, you're a sellout. Why'd you go there? Like, why are you at Ole Miss?" They don't like people. Like, don't you know what Ole Miss means? And, my answer is very similar to yours. Yeah, I know a lot about it. Would you like me to educate you? But I would say my reality is, I'm a proud black woman who went to Ole Miss, and I'm very aware of the history that we have. And I represent Ole Miss, and I still wear my Ole Miss hats and T-shirts in Washington, D.C. to continue to educate people and show that we're growing, we're changing, and it will continue to be a battle is the wrong word, but it will continue to be a battle as far as having people understand black and white and the dichotomy and the understanding of what it's like to be black and white in Mississippi and going to a predominantly white institution. But I'm not a sellout. I represent being a black woman, or just a woman in general, in a very, it's a very significant thing to me, and I'm proud of that.
I experience a lot of sympathy from people, and I think that's kind of like a stereotype that it's very odd. It's like when you meet somebody and you tell them that they went to Ole Miss, they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." You know what I mean? Like, I know you probably went through a lot, and I'm like, don't be sorry for me, because I mean, it's one of the best things that ever happened to me, going to this school, choosing this school. Out of everyone in my family, I'm the first person to ever attend Ole Miss. So I'm first generation. I'm from Louisville, Mississippi, which Starkville is right next door. Everybody goes to Mississippi State. So when I decided to come here, it's almost like everybody's like, it must be so hard being black going there. And I'm like, I mean, it is, but don't feel bad for me. You know what I mean? That's the stereotype. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's the stereotype that I'm approached with all the time. Almost like automatic sympathy just because I'm black and I go here, Yep.
Very similar experiences. I definitely got it from my family. They're like, "Wait, where are you going to school at? You going to school up there with them white folks?" And I was like, "Yeah." 4-year university, actually. If you want to talk about it, we can absolutely talk about it, especially now that I'm done. But they kind of let it go. But with the family, it goes back, years. My skin being lighter than some of theirs. Them calling me white boy since I was in 3rd grade and whatnot. But people like to kind of project things onto Ole Miss and the black experience at Ole Miss, and they act like that, since we go here, we might be stripping some of our blackness away, and that is 100% not the case, because I do know my history. I love being black. I know that I'm black, and it's not going to change, except things here are trying to change, though.
Right.
That's what people don't see. Our administration, especially the previous administration, they did a lot to try. They were trying, which is a lot more than you can say about some other places.
Right. Now, I don't know how many of you women deal with this problem, but I will tell you that the first thing that people normally say after I tell them I go to Ole Miss is, first, you get the pity. But I was interviewing a U.S. senator, and he's from the South. I won't say his name. And we started talking about college. He was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Yeah, I went to Ole Miss." He was like, "Oh, you did?" And then he said, what position did you play?
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Wow.
And I said, well, sir, first things first. First, I went to school on an academic scholarship. Second of all, the last sport I played was in high school, and I wasn't very good at it then. So no, I did not play football. I did not play basketball. I did not run track. I did not play baseball. I went to school.
right.
That's what I did at Ole Miss. So I don't know. I suspect both of you have had to deal with that, but I don't know how many. Do y'all get why you were at Ole Miss because you played sports question?
I'm a smaller guy, so I never got I never got the football question. But I did have someone ask me, oh, you must have ran track.
Right, exactly. Exactly. That's why you have to be here, because especially if you're a black male, you're here because you play sports.
Right.
I definitely had so after leaving Ole Miss, I went to a predominantly black law school. And so I went to HBCU, and so Historical Black and College and University. And so my experience was totally different. So I went from Ole Miss to one space to being around peers and predominantly black peers who never had been around a lot of white folks. And here I am having been around a lot of white folks all my life. And so it was very different. So they all had a lot of questions, and they all immediately assumed, felt sympathy for me, oh, you went to Ole Miss, and they had come from other predominantly black schools like Howard University and different places, and so they're coming to Thurgood Marshall School of Law. They're coming from this different spaces that they've been in all their life, and here I am coming from Ole Miss to Thurgood. So my experience there was very different, and so my colleagues in law school had a ton of questions about my experience at Ole Miss. They made assumptions, they felt sorry, and just did not understand why I would go to Ole Miss. And like Ashley said, I'm proud to have gone to Ole Miss, and I think a lot of times I look at some of my colleagues and they struggle to communicate with people who don't look like them. And I'm thankful for my experiences I've had here, because Ole Miss forces you to get into spaces sometimes that are uncomfortable. And I think that I grew here. I found who I was at Ole Miss, and able to share those experiences with other people. So I'm thankful for my experience here at Ole Miss, and I wear going to Ole Miss as a badge. I love this university.
With what Kim said, I met so many people that go to HBCUs, and when I tell them I went to Ole Miss, they automatically think you're not black enough.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm like, what does that have to do? You know what I mean? Do anything.
Right.
I'm still black. You know what I mean? I'm still aware of my blackness. I still know where I came from and who I am. Just because I went to a predominantly white university doesn't mean that I'm whitewashed in a sense.
Right. Well, sorry. All right. Sorry. I was about to say something.
So I get a very confused reaction when I get from Ole Miss. My colleagues have learned to love me. Under these faux dreads I have in right now, I have an afro. So when I tell them I go to Ole Miss, they're like, oh, wait, we thought you were woke. And then and I'm like, I am. But my white colleagues are like, I'm so confused. She has an afro, but she doesn't talk like them. So are we cool? And I'm like, we're good. I get along with everybody. I listen to everybody's opinion. I take pride in being first a journalist. My opinions do not matter. It is your stories that matter first and foremost. So when it comes to having to battle what it means to go to Ole Miss and having to explain it, I'm like, hey, everybody faces racism. I can literally go to DC and go to the wrong side of town to the wrong gas station and somebody assumes something about me. Assumptions are a real part of life. So I have to explain that part to them, and it's not a sole issue that Ole Miss suffers from. University of Memphis does, LSU does, Alabama does. It's not an Ole Miss issue, and Ole Miss has gotten such a bad rap just because of our history. So I try to give it a little more context and help them explain or understand that just because you look a certain way or you went to a certain school doesn't mean that you have to act in the stereotypical sense that people expect. So.
Okay. This campaign is also about all of the different roles we play outside of race. We all have different parts to ourselves. What are some of the other roles that you play in your life that you want to share with us? For example, I'll start. I'm a comic book geek. I've been a comic book geek my whole life. I'm a sci-fi guy. And so one of the most exciting things that has happened to me is that I got to write a novel about the Black Panther that's coming out later on this year. I got, out of all of the stuff I've written as a journalist, as a historian, I can tell you I'm most excited about this Black Panther novel that's coming out later this year. I mean, it's a lifelong dream, and I'm finally in the comic book world. But if you look at me as an author and as a journalist, you'd never know that. So we all play different roles, and this role has nothing to do with race. It's about a passion. What are some of the other roles that you guys play? You guys, sorry, I've been told by my wife to stop saying you guys. That you all, I'll go y'all, that y'all play.
I guess I'll go with that one. So one of the things that I think is really near to me outside of like dealing with issues of diversity and inclusion, I'm really in tune with like the new millennial movement and how millennials and how we integrate ourselves into the work life after college, because it is such a transition. I'm warning y'all now. Enjoy every minute of college. It's such a transition. And so on top of being an attorney, I write for Forbes. I'm a contributor for Forbes magazine. And so a lot of the stories that I write for them have to deal with like millennial experiences and how we as millennials, and I think it's pretty much if you're under the age of 20 right now or anything, it's you're considered a millennial, and how we interact with the world and how we interact in the workspace. And so for me, that has kind of become something I'm really into, the millennial experience, because we're just so different. If you're a young person in the world today, we're very tech savvy, the way we interact, the way we date, like it just, everything about us is just so different. You know, people are swiping right, swiping left, like just the world is just different these days.
Because you have people like me who I didn't understand anything she just said.
So it's just different. And so for me, that is just so fascinating. And I think that, you know, outside of conversations of race and diversity, to me, that's really interesting. I think a lot of places, workplaces now, are having to like open up their eyes and say, okay, millennials work different. They are very different from other generations. How do we accommodate them as well? So that's been kind of something that's been my passion, and just something other than outside my race that I'm really interested in too.
Anybody else want to jump in? Share some secrets about your life. All right, I won't. We'll come back to this. Sneak back into that. But we're actually getting close to the end of the talk. So one of the things I want to ask each of you, what would be a piece of advice that you would give a journalism student now? And a second part, and maybe these two answers are the same, what would be a piece of advice you would give a Black journalist student here? Maybe those answers are the same, maybe not. But a piece of advice for journalism students and or Black journalism students.
Get your facts right. Get your facts right. Because whether you're black, green, blue, red, turquoise, if you're wrong, you are wrong. And it doesn't help anybody. So just get your facts right, know it, be able to fight for what you believe in, and keep moving on. That's for anybody.
Yeah. Be tenacious. Make yourself indispensable. And that's for any person going into journalism, IMC, PR. I think that goes across the board. For Black students going into the media, I would say try as best as you can to fight against the rumor or the whispers, oh, she's just meeting a quota. So again, make yourself indispensable in a way that they don't question the work. No one can deny the work, right? So yeah, I think that would be my advice.
Mine would be to be versatile and open-minded. And again, you cannot combat being a hard worker. If you work hard and your work is showing, you cannot combat that.
My advice to especially student journalists, get off campus.
Yes.
Stories do not come to you like they come to you on campus. I actually think that has kind of hindered me thus far in my career, is that while I did have those projects off of campus, please go out into the community and talk to more people who don't have Ole Miss shirts on, who aren't wearing what you're wearing. Please go talk to other people, because that's where your stories come from, and that's where you're important. You are to help those voices have a place, like kind of in the world, to magnify their voices and their experiences. So campus will spoil you, and your newsroom will not. Absolutely, that's the truth. And to Black journalists, it'd be to kind of just be aware. You're going to have to be probably more aware than some of your colleagues. And so keep an eye on things and keep an eye on yourself, because you're going to be in some situations that you probably don't want to be in, but you have no choice because there is a deadline that you have to meet.
Just to journalism students, I will always say, do more. Whenever you felt like you've done enough, you haven't, still do more. As many things as you can do that are journalistic, that you can use for your own benefit in the future when you do graduate. It's very, very competitive with getting out into the job market with a journalism degree in general. There are mass amounts of journalism students applying for the same job that you're going to be applying for, and you want to make yourself competitive. You want to make yourself stand out in any kind of way that you can. Start a portfolio now, begin a website, start a blog, whatever it is that you want to do. And a lot of times getting employed, specifically in a newsroom, they do not waste any time chucking your application to the side. Do something to make yourself stand out, and don't stop working. As far as to a Black student, I guess what I would say is, whatever setting that you're in, integrate, but don't assimilate. You want to remain true to who you are as a journalist, but also as a person. And just because you may be outnumbered, don't let that scare you. Just because you may be one brown face out of several white ones, don't let that scare you. Continue to do the hard work that you're doing, but don't lose yourself. Remember who you are.
I'm going to add into that for all journalism students, internships. Internships. Because there are a lot of students that come out of college that have nothing but college to show to a newsroom, and they're going to look at that, and you're going to go into the circular file, and they're going to move on to the next person who has clips from a professional organization, from a professional entity, from a newspaper, from a website, people who've been published. One of the things I had to learn while in college was that no one outside of college cares what grade you made. They want to know if you can write. They want to know if you can write. It doesn't matter if you're an honor student and you can't write a compelling story.
Right.
You can't tell a compelling tale. And professional experience, internships. And honestly, I consider all of the student media organizations on campus, the television station, the radio station, the newspaper, they're professional organizations. Those clips are as good as clips you're going to get anywhere else. And they're here. Take advantage of them. How are we on time?
We've got a couple of minutes, but if you're taking questions, can I be passing out slips for door prizes so they can
Sure.
sign up?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Sign up for a door prize. I've got pieces of paper. Raise your hand if you think you want to sign up.
Can I say?
I'm actually going to ask one more concluding question. This will be the last one. What advice do you have for students when they're covering racial issues? And when they're dealing with racial issues, whether it's PR, journalism, television, print, what advice do you have for journalism students when they're covering and dealing with racial issues? Go.
I'd say, as much as it might hurt to bite your tongue, you absolutely have to. There is no room for editorializing in your stories, no matter how much it might hurt you inside. No matter your opinion, your opinion doesn't matter in those stories, because it's the people who you're talking to. Their opinions matter in the story. So we all have our inherent biases, but try your best to not include those, because it is vital that you don't.
To kind of piggyback off what he said, you're going to want to be biased because your emotions are in it. It's a part of you going into your work. I think it's important to channel that energy into the work that you're doing. Almost turn a negative into a positive. Those feelings and emotions that you have, use those to drive you to tell the best story that you can.
Ladies?
I mean, with the bias, I just think you just have to be fair. Like, you have to remove yourself from it, and you just have to be fair and tell the story.
Like we said, journalists are unbiased, but I think it's also easy for us to get separated from what the story actually is. So I'm a producer, so I'm not out in the world with reporters. But I work in a predominantly black city. It's over 60-something% black. So they have to be aware of what the people they are serving are going through, but not lean towards them. Does that make sense? A little bit? They have to know that these people are dealing with astronomical rates of poverty. They have to know that the educational systems are falling apart. They have to know that they're dealing with police brutality or whatever you want to call it, and police are also overworked and underpaid, and you have to have context in your head so that you can serve your population, but at the same time, your opinion doesn't matter. It's the opinion of the people that you're serving. So with race, gender, whatever, keep those people's feelings in mind, but leave yours out of it.
And I'm going to add in there that the only stupid question is the one you didn't ask, and you assumed you knew what was going on. Mm-hmm. Especially when dealing with issues of race, especially dealing with issues of a race that's not your own, and even if it's dealing with an issue of a race that is your own. Mm-hmm. Never assume you understood what just happened. Mm-hmm. Ask the stupid question. Ask, what does swipe right mean? Or is it swipe left?
It's like Tinder.
It's both.
Ask the stupid question, because you don't know what other information you might find out. But one thing you don't want to do is go back and write a story and make an assumption about what you just saw or heard. Because I guarantee you, if you got it wrong,
They will tell you.
they will find you and they will tell you. So let's give a round of applause for our great panel here. Thank you all. This was a great conversation. Robin, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes. Miss Emma, are you ready? Why don't we let Jesse draw, because he has that wonderful voice and he called in his house. I have a gift card to Cups. I have a medium and an extra large t-shirt. So if you're the first name drawn, you get your choice.
Ellie class? Oh, there you are, Ellie. Okay.
Come down, Ellie.
Come down, Ellie. All right. How many do I do? 3?
3.
3. All right. Kyle Grievous. Oh, okay. Well, if you're not here for the door prize. All right. Ryan Beeman. All right, that's number 2. Last one. This is the kind of situation you panic. You get someone's name you can't pronounce. All right. Oh, and Jane Case. There you go. Those are your 3.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.